Democracy. A simple word, a powerful idea. At its heart lies a fundamental belief. The will of the people should guide the course of their collective destiny. From the bustling city-states of ancient Greece to the sprawling nations of the modern world, this ideal has captivated generations. But how do we translate this lofty aspiration into a functional system? How do we take the cacophony of individual voices, each with its own unique perspective and priorities, and weave them into a harmonious chorus that reflects the will of the people? This is where the concept of voting comes in. We cast our ballots not just as individuals but as participants in a grand, collective endeavor to distill order from the chaos of individual preferences. But what if this very system designed to give voice to the people is inherently flawed? Imagine a group of friends trying to decide on a restaurant for dinner. Italian, Mexican, Thai. Each option has its proponents and detractors. Simple majority vote, right? But what if the outcome changes depending on the order in which the choices are presented? This seemingly trivial example hints at a much deeper problem. When faced with more than two options, how do we ensure that the winner truly reflects the collective will? Can we design a voting system that consistently produces outcomes that are fair, representative, and logically sound? This is where we encounter a fundamental paradox. The more choices we have, the harder it becomes to make a decision that satisfies everyone, or even adheres to basic principles of rationality. Our intuition tells us that more options equal more freedom, but in the realm of collective decision-making, this isn't always the case. In 1952, a young economist named Kenneth Arrow published a groundbreaking theorem that shook the foundations of democratic theory. Arrow's Impossibility theorem, as it came to be known, demonstrated mathematically that no voting system can perfectly translate individual preferences into a fair and consistent group decision when there are more than two options. Arrow's theorem isn't just an abstract mathematical curiosity. It has profound implications for the way we think about democracy, elections, and decision-making in any group setting. It exposes the inherent limitations of our attempts to capture the will of the people through voting, and forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our democratic systems, despite their noble aspirations, are inherently flawed. Arrow's Impossibility theorem, despite its rather ominous name, is not about declaring democracy impossible. It's a mathematical proof that highlights the inherent trade-offs we make when designing any voting system. Arrow begins by laying out a few seemingly reasonable criteria for a fair voting system. These criteria, which he called axioms, are like the foundational principles upon which we might build a fair and just system of collective decision-making. They seem straightforward enough at first glance. If everyone agrees on the best outcome, the system should reflect that. No single individual should be able to dictate the outcome for everyone else, and the introduction of irrelevant options shouldn't sway the results. Simple, right? But as we delve deeper into the implications of these axioms, the waters begin to muddy. The elegance of Arrow's theorem lies in its ability to demonstrate how these seemingly self-evident principles, when translated into the language of mathematics, can clash in unexpected ways, revealing a fundamental tension at the heart of democratic processes. Let's start with the first two axioms: unanimity and non-dictatorship. Unanimity posits that if every individual in a group prefers option A to option B, then the group's collective preference should also rank A above B. Seems straightforward. A system that couldn't even guarantee that would hardly be considered fair. Non-dictatorship, on the other hand, states that there shouldn't be a single individual whose preferences always dictate the outcome, regardless of what everyone else thinks. We don't want a system where one person has absolute power and can impose their will on the entire group. So far, so good. These first two axioms seem like no-brainers. Any system that couldn't even meet these basic criteria would be immediately suspect. But as we'll see, even these seemingly obvious principles, when combined with the remaining axioms, create a surprisingly intricate web of constraints. Now, we arrive at the heart of the matter, the independence of irrelevant alternatives, IIA. This axiom states that the ranking between any two options, A and B, should depend only on how individuals rank A and B relative to each other, and not on their preferences for some irrelevant third option C. In other words, if we're trying to decide between pizza and tacos for dinner, the introduction of sushi as a third option shouldn't suddenly make tacos seem more appealing than pizza. The presence of sushi is, in this case, irrelevant to the relative merits of pizza versus tacos. This axiom is where things start to get tricky. While it sounds intuitively appealing, it has far-reaching implications. It essentially demands that our voting system treat each pairwise comparison in isolation, as if the other options didn't exist. This, as we'll see, is a difficult requirement to meet. Finally, we have the axiom of transitivity. This principle states that if a group prefers option A to option B and option B to option C, then the group must also prefer option A to option C. This is essentially the if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A must be greater than C rule applied to collective preferences. Transitivity is about ensuring that our collective preferences are internally consistent. It's hard to imagine a system where a group would choose A over B, B over C, and then turn around and pick C over A. That would suggest a fundamental illogic in the way the group's preferences are aggregated. With these four axioms in place, Arrow sets the stage for his groundbreaking theorem. He'll demonstrate that while each axiom seems reasonable on its own, when taken together, they create a set of constraints that no voting system can simultaneously satisfy. Arrow's impossibility theorem, in its purest mathematical form, can seem daunting. However, its essence is surprisingly simple, yet profound. It states that no voting system can satisfy all four of our fairness axioms: unanimity, non-dictatorship, independence of irrelevant alternatives, and transitivity, when there are three or more options to choose from. This means that every voting system we could ever devise will inevitably involve some sort of trade-off. We might have to sacrifice a degree of transitivity to ensure the independence of irrelevant alternatives or compromise on non-dictatorship to guarantee unanimity. There is no perfect system, no mathematical utopia where individual preferences are seamlessly translated into a fair and consistent collective choice. This realization is not just an academic curiosity, it strikes at the very heart of our democratic ideals, forcing us to confront the inherent limitations of our attempts to capture the will of the people through voting. It suggests that the quest for a perfect voting system is, in a sense, a fool's errand. One of the most striking illustrations of Arrow's theorem in action is the Condorcet Paradox, named after the 18th century French mathematician and philosopher who first described it. Imagine three voters, Alice, Bob, and Carol, deciding on their preferred ranking of three policy options, A, B, and C. Alice prefers A to B and B to C. Bob prefers B to C and C to A. Carol prefers C to A and A to B. The majority preference forms a cycle, violating the axiom of transitivity. The Condorcet Paradox isn't just a theoretical curiosity, it highlights a very real problem in voting systems: the potential for strategic voting. If voters are aware of the preferences of others, they may be tempted to misrepresent their true preferences to manipulate the outcome in their favor. Imagine, for example, that Alice knows Bob and Carol's preferences. Knowing that her top choice option A is vulnerable in a head-to-head matchup against C, she might decide to strategically rank B higher on her ballot, even though she doesn't truly prefer it. By doing so, she increases the chances of B beating C in an initial round of voting, setting up a final showdown between A and B, where her preferred option, A, would likely prevail. This strategic maneuvering undermines the very purpose of voting, which is to accurately aggregate individual preferences. It turns the act of voting into a game of manipulation and undermines the legitimacy of the outcome. Section 4. The tyranny of the majority. Arrow's theorem also sheds light on another potential pitfall of democratic systems: the tyranny of the majority. While democracy is often touted as a system where the will of the people reigns supreme, it's important to remember that the people are not a monolithic entity. They are a diverse collection of individuals with a wide range of interests, values, and preferences. A voting system that solely focuses on satisfying the preferences of the majority can end up marginalizing or even disenfranchising minority groups. If the majority consistently votes in its own self-interest, without regard for the needs and perspectives of the minority, the result can be a form of tyranny, even if it's a tyranny of numbers. This highlights the importance of considering not just the outcome of a vote, but also the process by which that outcome is reached. A fair and just democratic system must find ways to balance the principle of majority rule with the protection of minority rights. Section 5. Beyond Arrow, Searching for Solutions. Arrow's Impossibility. Theorem is not a counsel of despair. It doesn't tell us that democracy is impossible or that voting is futile. Instead, it serves as a sobering reminder of the complexities inherent in collective decision-making. It urges us to be realistic about the limitations of any voting system and to approach the design of such systems with humility and a nuanced understanding of the trade-offs involved. Rather than seeking an elusive, perfect system, we should strive to design systems that are as fair, representative, and robust as possible, while acknowledging that there will always be room for improvement. We should encourage open and informed debate about the strengths and weaknesses of different voting methods, and be willing to experiment with new approaches that might mitigate some of the shortcomings highlighted by Arrow's theorem. Section 1. The Electoral College Conundrum. The United States Electoral College, designed by the Founding Fathers to elect the president, often produces winners who haven't won the popular vote. This discrepancy exposes a fundamental tension between two interpretations of democratic fairness. Should the candidate with the most votes nationwide prevail, or should the distribution of votes across states also hold sway? Public policy paralysis. Arrow's theorem extends its reach beyond elections, infiltrating the realm of public policy. Consider a city council grappling with budget allocation. Should they prioritize education, infrastructure, or public safety? Each option enjoys support from different segments of the population, each with their own compelling arguments. A simple majority vote might seem like the democratic solution, but what if the outcome hinges on the order in which proposals are presented? What if a proposal combining elements of all three options, while not anyone's ideal, could garner broader support than any single-issue proposal? This scenario illustrates how Arrow's theorem can lead to policy paralysis. The quest to find a solution that perfectly reflects the will of the people can become an elusive chase, with competing priorities and the potential for strategic voting hindering the decision-making process. Compromise and consensus building, often messy and imperfect, become essential tools in navigating this complex landscape. Corporate boardroom dilemmas. Even the seemingly rational world of business isn't immune to Arrow's theorem. Imagine a company's board of directors deciding on a strategic direction. Should they invest in research and development, pursue aggressive marketing campaigns, or focus on acquisitions? Each board member, representing different stakeholders and perspectives, brings their own priorities to the table. Again, a simple majority vote might seem like the straightforward solution, but what if the outcome changes depending on the order in which options are presented, or if alliances form around specific proposals, not necessarily reflecting the overall best interest of the company? This example demonstrates how Arrow's theorem can hinder strategic decision-making in organizations. The pursuit of a single best solution, perfectly reflecting the collective will of the board, can become mired in complexities. Effective leadership in such scenarios involves navigating these limitations, fostering open communication, and guiding the decision-making process towards a solution that, while perhaps not ideal for everyone, serves the best interests of the organization as a whole. The illusion of choice. Arrow's theorem compels us to confront a potentially unsettling notion, the illusion of choice. We often assume that more options equate to greater freedom and a more democratic system. However, as we've seen, an abundance of choices can lead to paradoxes, strategic voting, and outcomes that don't truly reflect the collective will. This realization extends beyond the realm of voting. From consumer choices to career paths, the modern world bombards us with options, often leaving us feeling overwhelmed and paralyzed rather than empowered. Arrow's theorem serves as a reminder that true freedom lies not just in having choices, but in having meaningful choices, presented within a framework that facilitates informed and rational decision-making. This understanding challenges us to rethink the design of systems, processes, and even the presentation of information to ensure that choices are not merely abundant, but also clear, meaningful, and conducive to outcomes that genuinely reflect individual and collective preferences. Section 5. Beyond the Ballot Box. Arrow's impossibility theorem, while rooted in the mathematics of voting, transcends the confines of the ballot box. It speaks to the broader challenge of aggregating diverse individual preferences into a coherent collective choice, a challenge that permeates every aspect of human interaction. From deciding on a family vacation destination to negotiating international treaties, we are constantly grappling with the complexities of aligning individual desires with the common good. Arrow's theorem doesn't offer easy answers, but it does provide a valuable framework for understanding the inherent limitations of our attempts to do so. It encourages us to approach collective decision-making with humility, recognizing that no system is perfect, and that trade-offs are inevitable. It highlights the importance of open dialogue, compromise, and a commitment to finding solutions that, while perhaps not ideal for everyone, move us closer to a world where individual voices are heard and collective goals are achieved. Section 1. Embracing Compromise, the Art of the Possible. Arrow's impossibility theorem reveals the limitations of voting systems but isn't a repudiation of democracy. It calls for embracing compromise as essential in any democratic system. We must shift from seeking perfection to navigating imperfection. Diverse values mean no single solution satisfies everyone. Compromise acknowledges subjectivity and seeks convergence for the majority while respecting minority perspectives. Section 2. Beyond Majority Rule, Exploring Alternative Decision-Making Models. Arrow's theorem, while focused on traditional voting systems, also prompts us to explore alternative decision-making models that might circumvent some of the limitations it exposes. While majority rule often serves as the default mechanism for collective choice, it's not the only game in town. Consensus-based decision-making, for example, strives for unanimous agreement rather than simply relying on a numerical majority. This approach, often employed in smaller groups, emphasizes dialogue, active listening, and a willingness to revisit and revise proposals until a solution emerges that accommodates everyone's key concerns. Other models, such as ranked choice voting, where voters rank candidates in order of preference, aim to capture a more nuanced picture of voter sentiment than simple first-past-the-post systems. These alternative approaches, while not immune to Arrow's theorem's broader implications, offer valuable tools for expanding our democratic toolbox and tailoring decision-making processes to the specific context and goals at hand. Section 3. The Role of Deliberation, Fostering Informed Consensus. Deliberation is vital for informed decision-making in any voting system. Voting expresses preferences but isn't a substitute for building understanding and seeking common ground. Deliberative democracy emphasizes meaningful conversations about public issues. It requires a commitment to civic engagement and informed decision-making. Section 4. The Enduring Power of Democracy, Navigating Imperfection. Arrow's impossibility theorem serves as a testament to the enduring power of the democratic ideal. Democracy doesn't exist in a realm of perfect solutions. It unfolds in the messy space of human interaction. Within this imperfection lies democracy's strength. It grants each individual a voice in shaping their collective destiny. Section 1. The Imperfect Yet Essential Dream. Arrow's impossibility theorem exposes the inherent limitations of any voting system. It challenges our understanding of fairness and strategic manipulation, and the tension between majority rule and minority rights. Yet democracy's strength lies in its flexibility and capacity to evolve. It adapts as our understanding of justice and equality deepens. Arrow's theorem refines democracy, reminding us that a perfect system is a chimera. It redirects our focus to strengthening democratic institutions and fostering informed citizenry. Embracing compromise is essential for a just and equitable world. Arrow's theorem serves as a reminder of the challenges and promise of democracy.